हेलो एवरीवन। कभी सोचा है कि हमारा इतना बड़ा, इतना डाइवर्स देश इंडिया एक साथ कैसे रहता है? इट्स अ ह्यूज क्वेश्चन, राइट? इसका जवाब है एक कॉन्सेप्ट में जिसका नाम है फेडरलिज्म। ये सब पावर शेयरिंग के बारे में है एंड इट्स लाइक द सीक्रेट इंग्रेडिएंट जो इतने सारे देशों को एक साथ जोड़े रखता है।
तो चलिए देखते हैं आज हम क्या क्या कवर करने वाले हैं। पहले हम समझेंगे कि आखिर फेडरलिज्म की जरूरत ही क्यों है, फिर देखेंगे कि यह होता क्या है, इसके 7 की फीचर्स क्या हैं, उसके बाद अपने देश इंडिया में यह सिस्टम कैसे काम करता है और फाइनली ये सब इतना इंपॉर्टेंट क्यों है। रेडी? लेट्स
सो सबसे पहले वही बड़ा सवाल, इंडिया के बारे में सोचो। कितनी सारी लैंग्वेजेस, अलग अलग रिलीजन्स, इतने रीजन्स, सबको इंक्लूडेड फील कराना और देश को एक साथ रखना ये इतना आसान नहीं है। एग्जैक्टली यही चैलेंज है जिसे फेडरलिज्म सॉल्व करने की कोशिश करता है।
अब देखो, यहाँ 2 बिल्कुल ऑपोजिट एग्जाम्पल्स हैं। आपको पिछले चैप्टर से बेल्जियम याद है? उन्होंने पावर शेयरिंग का रास्ता चुना और यूनिटी हासिल की। लेकिन श्रीलंका ने एक डिफरेंट पाथ लिया। उन्होंने सारी पावर नेशनल गवर्नमेंट के पास रखी, जिससे आगे चलकर बहुत कॉन्फ्लिक्ट हुआ। सो इससे समझ आता है कि गवर्नमेंट का सिस्टम चुनना कितना कितना क्रिटिकल हो सकता है।
तो इन प्रॉब्लम्स का सोल्यूशन क्या है? वेल, द आंसर इज फेडरलिज्म। ये एक ऐसा सिस्टम है जिसे बहुत सारी डाइवर्स कंट्रीज अपनी कॉम्प्लेक्सिटी मैनेज करने और यूनाइटेड रहने के लिए यूज करते हैं।
और आप जितना सोचते हैं ना, ये उससे कहीं बड़ी चीज है। जरा इस मैप को देखो। दुनिया में सिर्फ 25 देशों में ही फेडरल सिस्टम है। अ स्मॉल नंबर, राइट? बट पूरी दुनिया की 40% पॉपुलेशन इन्हीं देशों में रहती है। थिंक अबाउट दैट। इसका मतलब साफ है, बड़ी और डाइवर्स पॉपुलेशंस को मैनेज करने के लिए ये सिस्टम बहुत जरूरी है। तो आखिर इसकी ऑफिशियल डेफिनेशन क्या है? बहुत सिंपल है। फेडरलिज्म एक ऐसा गवर्नमेंट सिस्टम है जिसमें पावर एक जगह नहीं होती, पावर को डिवाइड किया जाता है एक सेंट्रल अथॉरिटी और देश की अलग अलग यूनिट्स के बीच, जैसे हमारे यहाँ सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट और स्टेट गवर्नमेंट्स के बीच। इसका सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंट यह है कि एक फेडरल सिस्टम में सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट स्टेट गवर्नमेंट को ऐसे ही ऑर्डर नहीं दे सकती। उनकी बॉस नहीं है। दोनों के पास अपनी अपनी पावर्स हैं और दोनों ही सीधे हम लोगों को यानी जनता को आंसरेबल हैं। ये यूनिटरी सिस्टम से बिल्कुल उल्टा है। वहां तो सिर्फ एक ही लेवल की गवर्नमेंट होती है या फिर सारी स्मॉलर यूनिट्स सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट के अंडर काम करती हैं। और देखिए, आपकी टेक्स्ट बुक में एक बहुत ही अच्छा सवाल है, हम इंडियन गवर्नमेंट को क्या कहते हैं, यूनियन, फेडरल या सेंट्रल? इसका जवाब ढूंढने के लिए पहले हमें इसका ऑफिशियल रूल बुक समझना पड़ेगा। तो चलिए देखते हैं वो की फीचर्स क्या हैं जो किसी भी देश को ट्रूली फेडरल बनाते हैं। तो आखिर वो क्या चीज़ है जो किसी देश को फेडरल बनाती है? ये सिर्फ एक नाम नहीं है, बल्कि कुछ स्पेसिफिक रूल्स हैं जो फॉलो करने पड़ते हैं। चलिए अब हम फेडरलिज्म के इन 7 यानी 7 की फीचर्स को देखते हैं।
ओके, तो एक एक करके इनको समझते हैं। पहला, गवर्नमेंट के 2 या उससे ज्यादा लेवल्स या टीयर्स होने चाहिए। इजी। दूसरा, ये अलग अलग टीयर्स एक ही सिटीजन्स पर रूल करते हैं, लेकिन सबका अपना अपना जुरिस्डिक्शन यानी काम करने का एरिया होता है। तीसरा, हर टीयर की अथॉरिटी कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनली गारंटीड होती है, यानी संविधान में लिखा होता है। चौथा, एंड दिस इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन के फंडामेंटल चेंजेस दोनों लेवल्स की मर्जी से ही हो सकते हैं, अकेले कोई नहीं कर सकता। पांचवां, अगर कोई डिस्प्यूट या झगड़ा हो तो कोर्ट्स एक अंपायर की तरह काम करती हैं। छठा, हर लेवल के लिए पैसा कहां से आएगा ये भी स्पेसिफाई किया जाता है ताकि उनके पास फाइनेंशियल ऑटोनॉमी हो। और आखिरी, इन सब के 2 मेन ऑब्जेक्टिव्स हैं, देश की यूनिटी को बचाना और रीजनल डाइवर्सिटी को अकोमोडेट करना।
मैंने अभी एक वर्ड यूज किया, जुरिस्डिक्शन। ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट कॉन्सेप्ट है। इसका सिंपल सा मतलब है लीगल अथॉरिटी का एरिया, मतलब किसका कंट्रोल कहां तक है। ये जियोग्राफिकल हो सकता है, जैसे एक स्टेट की बाउंड्री, या फिर सब्जेक्ट्स के बेसिस पर भी हो सकता है, जैसे डिफेंस पर कानून कौन बनाएगा और लोकल पुलिस पर कौन।
ठीक है, तो थ्योरी तो हमने समझ ली। अब देखते हैं कि ये सब हमारे अपने देश इंडिया पर कैसे अप्लाई होता है। इंडिया इन फेडरलिज्म के प्रिंसिपल्स को प्रैक्टिस में कैसे लाता है।
देखिए, फेडरेशंस 2 तरह से बनते हैं। एक है कमिंग टुगेदर फेडरेशन। इसमें इंडिपेंडेंट स्टेट्स साथ आके एक बड़ी यूनिट बनाते हैं, जैसे यूएसए। इसमें स्टेट्स ज्यादा पावरफुल होते हैं। दूसरा है होल्डिंग टुगेदर फेडरेशन। इसमें एक बड़ा देश अपने पावर को स्टेट्स और नेशनल गवर्नमेंट के बीच डिवाइड करता है। इंडिया, स्पेन, बेल्जियम इसके एग्जाम्पल्स हैं। और यहाँ सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट थोड़ी ज्यादा पावरफुल होती है। सो इंडिया इज अ क्लासिक एग्जाम्पल ऑफ अ होल्डिंग टुगेदर फेडरेशन। अब यहाँ एक इंटरेस्टिंग बात है, हमारे कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में फेडरेशन वर्ड का इस्तेमाल कहीं नहीं हुआ है। इंस्टेड इंडिया को यूनियन ऑफ स्टेट्स कहा गया है। लेकिन इससे कंफ्यूज मत होना। भले ही नाम अलग हो, इंडियन यूनियन फेडरलिज्म के उन्हीं सारे प्रिंसिपल्स पर बना है जो हमने अभी डिस्कस किए। तो ये पावर आखिर डिवाइड कैसे की गई है? इसके लिए हमारे कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन ने 3 लिस्ट बनाई हैं। सबसे पहले है यूनियन लिस्ट। इसमें नेशनल इंपॉर्टेंस के सब्जेक्ट्स आते हैं, जैसे डिफेंस, फॉरेन अफेयर्स। इन पर सिर्फ यूनियन गवर्नमेंट ही कानून बना सकती है। फिर आती है स्टेट लिस्ट। इसमें लोकल इंपॉर्टेंस के सब्जेक्ट्स हैं, जैसे पुलिस, एग्रीकल्चर। इन पर स्टेट गवर्नमेंट्स कानून बनाती हैं। और तीसरी है कॉन्करेंट लिस्ट। इसमें ऐसे सब्जेक्ट्स हैं जिन पर दोनों लॉ बना सकते हैं, जैसे एजुकेशन, फॉरेस्ट्स। लेकिन हाँ, अगर दोनों के लॉ में कॉन्फ्लिक्ट हो तो यूनियन गवर्नमेंट का लॉ ही माना जाएगा।
एक और ब्रिलियंट सवाल, जब कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन बनाया गया था तब कंप्यूटर, सॉफ्टवेयर जैसी चीजें तो थी ही नहीं। तो अगर कोई नया सब्जेक्ट सामने आ जाए जो इन तीनों लिस्ट में से किसी में भी ना हो, तब क्या होगा? कौन बनाएगा उस पर लॉ?
इसका जवाब है रेजिड्यूअरी पावर्स। ये वो बचे कुचे सब्जेक्ट्स हैं। हमारे कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन के अकॉर्डिंग इन रेजिड्यूअरी सब्जेक्ट्स पर कानून बनाने की पावर यूनियन गवर्नमेंट के पास है। सो बेसिकली जो भी नए एरियाज आते हैं उन्हें सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट हैंडल करती है।
तो चलिए अब सब कुछ एक साथ लाते हैं। हम ये सारी मेहनत क्यों करते हैं? पावर्स डिवाइड करना, लिस्ट्स बनाना। आखिर ये फेडरलिज्म इतना मैटर क्यों करता है? जवाब एक बहुत ही फेमस फ्रेज में छुपा है, यूनिटी इन डाइवर्सिटी।
फेडरलिज्म के दो और दोनों ही इक्वली इंपॉर्टेंट गोल्स हैं। पहला गोल, देश की यूनिटी को प्रोटेक्ट करना और प्रमोट करना, ये इंश्योर करना कि हम सब एक रहें। और दूसरा गोल, हमारी रीजनल डाइवर्सिटी को अकोमोडेट करना, मतलब अलग अलग कल्चर्स, लैंग्वेजेस, सबको जगह देना। ये एक बहुत ही डेलिकेट बैलेंसिंग एक्ट है।
और आखिर में एक बात समझनी बहुत जरूरी है, ये सिस्टम सिर्फ रूल्स और लिस्ट से नहीं चलता। इसके आदर्श सिस्टम के लिए 2 चीजें बहुत क्रूशियल हैं। एक, आपस में म्यूचुअल ट्रस्ट यानी भरोसा, और दूसरा, साथ रहने का अग्रीमेंट। यही फेडरलिज्म की असली स्पिरिट है। चलिए इस एक्सप्लेनर को आपकी टेक्स्ट बुक के एक फैंटास्टिक क्वेश्चन के साथ एंड करते हैं, ताकि आप थोड़ा और सोचें। सवाल यह है कि अगर एग्रीकल्चर और कॉमर्स स्टेट लिस्ट के सब्जेक्ट्स हैं, तो यूनियन कैबिनेट में इनके मिनिस्टर्स क्यों होते हैं? सोचिए इसके बारे में, थोड़ी रिसर्च कीजिए। इससे आपकी अंडरस्टैंडिंग और भी गहरी होगी। थैंक यू सो मच फॉर ज्वाइनिंग।
All right, everyone, welcome back. In our last session, we got our heads around what federalism is. Today, we're diving into something really fascinating. Have you ever wondered how a country as incredibly diverse as India, with all its languages, cultures, and traditions, actually stays together as one nation? Well, the answer is all about how we practice federalism. Just take a look at these 2 maps. On the left, that's India in 1947. And on the right, that's the India we know today. It's a massive change, right? So many of the old states are gone, and a bunch of new ones have been created. Boundaries were redrawn, names were changed. You'd think all this upheaval would weaken the country. But here's the crazy part. It didn't. In fact, India became stronger and more united. The big question is, how? Let's dig in. So, what's the secret sauce here? What makes it all work? Well, it's not just about the rules written down in the Constitution. The real success, the real magic, comes from the spirit of our democracy. It's this deep-seated respect for diversity and this genuine desire to live together that really became the bedrock of our nation. Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty. Our federalism and our democratic spirit had to pass some pretty tough tests. We're going to look at 3 of them. First up, the monumental task of creating new states and drawing their borders. Right after independence in 1947, this was the first huge hurdle. What do we do with the old state boundaries left behind by the British? The decision was made to redraw the entire map of India. But on what basis? How do you even begin to decide where one state ends and another begins? So here's the key idea they landed on: create new states based on language. The thinking was pretty straightforward. Let's make sure people who speak the same language get to live together in the same state. But, and this is super important, it wasn't only about language. Some states were carved out to recognize unique cultures, ethnicities, or even geography. Think about places like Nagaland, Uttarakhand, and Jharkhand. Now, at the time, this was a really scary idea for some of our national leaders. They were genuinely worried that if you create states based on language, the country would just splinter and fall apart. The fear was absolutely real. But what actually happened? The complete opposite. Experience has shown that creating these linguistic states made the country more united, not less. Plus, it made governing and administration a whole lot easier. So, test number 1? Passed with flying colors. All right, let's move on to the second test. And this one, you could say, was even trickier. It was the language question. I mean, in a nation where people speak literally thousands of different tongues, how on earth do you decide on a language for communication in government? Just look at this number. More than 1,300. According to the 2011 census, people reported over 1,300 different mother tongues in India. Just take a moment to let that sink in. The sheer scale of our linguistic diversity is just mind-boggling. Now, here's what makes things really interesting. With all that diversity, there isn't one single language that's the mother tongue for the majority of Indians. Even Hindi, which is the most widely spoken, is the mother tongue for only about 44% of the population. So you see, trying to force just one language on the entire country was never ever going to work. This is why India's leaders came up with a very careful and flexible language policy. Let's break it down. First, and this is huge, India has no national language. Second, Hindi was chosen as the official language for government work. Third, besides Hindi, 22 other major languages are recognized as scheduled languages. This is a big deal because it means you can take central government exams in any of these languages. And finally, states are free to have their own official languages for their own work. And this whole situation with English is a perfect example of that flexibility. Originally, the Constitution said that the use of English for official work would stop in 1965. But many non-Hindi-speaking states, especially in the South, like Tamil Nadu, protested this, and some protests turned violent. So what did the central government do? It listened. They respected those feelings and agreed to let English continue to be used alongside Hindi. This smart compromise probably saved the country from a lot of conflict. Okay, so that's 2 tests down. Let's talk about the third and final test. This one is all about power. Who really holds the reins, the central government in Delhi or the individual state governments? This is all about center-state relations. This old cartoon really says it all. For a long, long time after independence, one single party ruled both at the center and in most of the states. And what that meant was the central government often acted like a big boss, sometimes even dismissing state governments run by rival parties. This really wasn't in the true spirit of federalism. But then, the 1990s came along. And after 1990, the entire political landscape of India began to change dramatically. So, what was this big change? Well, for starters, regional political parties started becoming really powerful in different states. This led to the era of coalition governments at the center. Basically, no single party was strong enough to win a majority on its own. So the big national parties had to form alliances with these regional parties to form a government. And this created a whole new culture, a culture of power sharing and respect for the independence of state governments. This cartoon captures that new reality perfectly. You've got a leader sitting on this very shaky throne made up of all their different coalition partners. The message is clear. If you upset even one of your partners, your whole government could come tumbling down. So now, the center had no choice but to listen to and respect its regional partner. So after navigating these 3 massive tests, it's safe to say that federal power sharing in India is more effective today than it was in the early years. Let's quickly recap the pillars that make it all work. When you boil it all down, the success of Indian federalism really stands on these 3 pillars. Number 1, a deep respect for our diversity, which we saw in the creation of linguistic states. Number 2, flexibility, which is crystal clear in our language policy. And number 3, genuine power sharing, which became the new normal in center-state relations after 1990. But of course, India is never static. Our country is always changing, our diversity is always growing, and new challenges are always popping up. So I'll leave you with a question to think about. What do you think will be the next big test for our federalism? Something to chew on. I'll catch you in the next one. Namaste and welcome back, everyone. So picture this. It's 1947. India is finally a free country. But now what? The leaders of this brand new nation were facing 2 absolutely massive questions. And in this explainer, we're going to explore the fascinating and honestly pretty surprising answers they came up with. Let's get started. So, what were these 2 huge challenges? Just think about it for a second. First, how do you stop a country with so many different languages and cultures from just falling apart? And second, how on earth do you even begin to govern a country this big? Let's find out the answers. All right, so let's jump into that first big answer. It was all about language and unity. You've got all these languages, all these cultures. How do you bring them all together into one single nation? It was a massive, massive puzzle. Now, at first, leaders like Nehru and Patel, they were genuinely scared. They had just seen the absolute horror of partition, right? Which was based on religion. Their thinking was, man, if we create states based on language now, are we just setting ourselves up for more partitions? And you know what? That fear was very, very real. But, and this is the fascinating part, what actually happened was the complete opposite of what they were afraid of. Instead of breaking the country apart, the decision to create states based on language, well, it actually made India stronger. So how did that work? Well, it turned out that creating states based on language made administration way easier for one, but more importantly, it made people feel respected. It showed them that their identity, their language, mattered. You could be a proud Kannadiga and a proud Indian, a proud Bengali and a proud Indian. See? The two identities weren't fighting each other. They were working together. So here's the bottom line. If India had tried to force just one language on everyone, it probably would have fractured into like 14 or 15 different nations. This policy wasn't just a good idea. It was a political masterstroke that literally saved the country. All right, one problem down, one to go. Now for that second big question. How on earth do you govern this beast of a country? The answer was simple, but absolutely revolutionary. Give the power to the people. And this slide really put things into perspective, doesn't it? Just look at these numbers. The population of Uttar Pradesh is bigger than Russia's. Maharashtra is about the size of Germany population-wise. So a simple two-tiered system with just a central and state government, no way that was going to work. You had to get power down to the grassroots, to the common person. And that's where this big idea of decentralization comes in. In simple terms, what is it? It's the process of taking power away from the central and state governments and giving it to local governments. This was the second big answer to India's governance puzzle. And the logic behind it is just common sense, really. Who knows what your neighborhood needs better? A politician sitting in Delhi or you? Obviously you do. Local people have the best knowledge of local problems. They know where to spend money to get the best results, and it lets people directly participate in the decisions that affect their own lives. So you can think of India's government system like a three-tiered train coach. You've got the central government at the top, then in the middle you have the state governments, and right at the bottom, closest to the people, you have the local government. A perfect three-tier structure. But here's the thing. For a long time, these local governments were, well, they were mostly just for show. They didn't have any real power or any real money. The true game changer, the moment everything shifted, came in 1992 with a huge constitutional amendment. Let's take a look. So before 1992, local governments were completely under the thumb of the state governments. Elections, they happened whenever the states felt like it, and they had basically zero power or resources of their own. But after 1992, everything changed. Suddenly, they had constitutionally guaranteed power. Regular elections became mandatory, and states were forced to share power and money with them. It was a massive, massive shift. This amendment really stood on 5 key pillars. First, mandatory regular elections. No more excuses. Second, reserve seats for scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, and OBCs to ensure representation. Third, and this was truly revolutionary, at least 1/3 of all positions were reserved for women. Fourth, independent state election commissions were set up to make sure elections were free and fair. And finally, number 5, state governments now had to share power and revenue. No more ifs or buts. Okay, so it's been over 30 years since this system was put in place. How's it doing today? Let's check out its report card and look at some of the hits and the misses. First off, just look at this number, 36 lakh. That's the number of elected representatives in India's local governments. I mean, think about that. That number is bigger than the entire population of many countries around the world. It's just mind-blowing, isn't it? This system of local government is, without a doubt, the largest experiment in democracy anywhere in the world. It has deepened the roots of democracy in every single village and city. And, perhaps most importantly, it has given a political voice to millions of women. But the journey is far from over. It's not a perfect story. These newspaper clippings show us both sides of the coin, the successes and the challenges. On one hand, you see amazing headlines like "Women Pradhans Bring Winds of Change." But then, on the other hand, you also see things like "States Oppose Direct Funding of Panchayats." The real fight for true decentralization is still going on. So the final report card looks something like this. In the hits column, local governments got constitutional status, elections are regular, and women's representation has shot up. Huge wins. But in the misses column, Gram Sabhas, or village meetings, often don't happen regularly, and state governments are still very reluctant to transfer any significant power or funds. We're still a long way from the ideal. All right, let's end this explainer with a really interesting question for you to think about. The Prime Minister runs the country. The Chief Minister runs the state. So, logically, shouldn't the Zilla Parishad chairperson, the elected head, run the district, right? So why is it that the DM, or the collector, who is an unelected government official, is the one who actually administers the entire district? It's a great question. Think about it, maybe do a little digging, and we'll see you in the next one. Keep learning.